Welcome to the Lapin Assessment. I'm extremely pleased this evening to have with me Professor Kobi Michael. He's a senior research fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv and also at the Misgav Institute for National Security and Zionist Strategy. And Professor Michael is also a visiting professor at the International Center for Policing and Security at the University of South Wales in the UK. He has served among his many past roles as Deputy Director General and head of the Palestinian division at Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs. Kobi, how are you this evening?
Hi, good evening. Cold, very cold.
Yeah, it is. It is
Uh,
also an unusually cold evening here, has to be said. But the region is hot. The region is red hot. We have a lot of uncertainty and developments. And I think, I'm sure you're having the same experience. A lot of people ask people who deal with the Middle East and with strategic and military and defense affairs, what is going to happen with Iran? And so I'd love to get your take. I'd like to refer that question over to you, Kobe. We have now two U.S. carrier strike groups heading towards Iran. We've got a President Trump promising to come to the rescue of the Iranian protesters. We've got images of really, I have no other way to describe it, but mass murder committed by the Iranian regime, by the Islamic Republic against its very own citizens who rose up and demanded, very basic things like a functioning economy, like running tap water, like not having hyperinflation, and that anger very quickly boiled over into demands for a functional political system, which of course they don't have, and not wasting all their treasure on failed proxy wars and missiles and nuclear program. And Israel, of course, raised its alert and it remains high. We seem to have a lot of uncertainty. So I'd love to get your take on what you think is really going on and what are the various scenarios going forward.
it looks that we are facing a very turbulent days. Actually, we are dealing with the head of the snake, with the main generator of the entire region and even beyond the region. Okay, just recently we were pretty busy with the story of Venezuela. Okay, Iran was there as well. It was a safe haven of Iran, and Iran collaborated with the regime in Venezuela and vice versa. And Iran is not only in the Middle East, Iran is in many other places as well, all over the globe. But Iran is a very, I would say, central pivot player here in the Middle East. And I think that what we are witnessing now in Iran, and you have described it very correctly about the massacre, is an indication about, I would say, three major crucial phenomena or things. The first one is that the protest and the demonstration and the frustration of the Iranian people is in the highest level since, I would say, at least 2009, if not even
Uh-huh.
more than that. And it looks that even if now the regime has succeeded to calm down or to oppress the protests, it will not remain like that for a long period of time because all the good reasons for the protest are still there. So this is the first thing. A very intensive protest, a very substantial, significant, something which is different in comparison to things that we knew before. The second thing is that the regime is under a huge pressure. Actually, the regime is, you use the term of uncertainty, okay, that we are facing. I think that this is exactly what the current regime in Iran faces these days. A very high level of uncertainty. First of all, in the domestic arena, okay,
Yep.
and the situation in Iran is very crucial, is very difficult from the economic point of view, from the political point of view, and of course, when it comes to the global arena or even to the Middle East. And the regime is under a very severe uncertainty because President Trump, because of the United States, and because of the state of Israel, because we have to understand that at the end of the day, President Trump is the leader. President Trump is in the front. But President Trump is very well coordinated with Prime Minister Netanyahu. The American administration is very well coordinated with the Israeli government. And the American military is very well coordinated with the IDF. And of course, the intelligence communities of both countries.
Yeah.
So I think that following the 12 days of Rising Lion operation of June 25, I think that the Iranians understand pretty well what Israel can do. They understand pretty well what their weaknesses are, and they are witnessing what the Americans are preparing too by building their forces here in the Persian, in the Arab Gulf, and in the Middle East, generally speaking. So these are very good two reasons to face a very severe uncertainty. And the
Hmm.
third thing is that after the demonstrations and after what happened in Iran and after the declarations of President Trump, and following the ambition of President Trump to change the entire rules of the game, not only with regard to Iran, okay, but vis-a-vis the UN, vis-a-vis the international community, including NATO,
Yeah.
okay, his allies. I think that Iran will not return to be what it used to be until the beginning of the demonstrations. Actually, my colleague in the INSS, the head of the Iranian program, Dr. Raz Tzimet, said, I think that it was just yesterday, that this is the end of the Second Republic of Iran. We are in front of the Third Republic of Iran. What will be the characteristics of the Third Republic? It is still unknown, but the days of the Second Republic that we knew since the revolution of 1979 actually are almost at the end.
Right.
And this is something that will impact dramatically the entire Middle East and even beyond the Middle East.
Hmm.
I think that once Iran or the current Iranian regime will collapse or will be changed by any regime that will understand that it will be much more reasonable to concentrate on the Iranian issues, to reconstitute, to rehabilitate the Iranian economy, the Iranian standard of living, the Iranian position in the international community, instead of continuing shouting death to America and death to Israel and to feed proxies with billions of dollars and to try to terrorize Israel, the United States, some other Western countries, and to try to hegemonize the Middle East. I
Hmm.
think that this will be a very good news for the entire Middle East, and it will create a very significant and substantial changes here with regard to the regional architecture.
Sure. And I have no doubt that the downfall of the regime would probably represent the single biggest boost to our security and strategic well-being that can be imagined because of all of the things that you described. I guess, the follow-on question I have is the very specific dynamics. The one thing that's unclear to me is we know, and what Raz Tzimit said is remarkable because we know that how long he would wait to make a statement like that, how not prone he is to making statements like this. So, when someone like him says something like that, that's a real sign that he thinks that change is in the air. But we see that millions of people cannot bring down this regime because they're unarmed, so they are massacred. And I agree that Iran will never go back to being the same way that it was. But at the moment, the regime is standing. And we know that airstrikes will not alone bring down this regime because they suffered severe airstrikes at the hands of Israel in June. So they've already, had a bruising war, which they essentially lost. They've already had massive instability, and they've stood up to that intact. What would be the game plan? What would be necessary to actually see this regime fall? Is it something that can really be done externally? Of course, airstrikes can help. Of course, perhaps, and this is obviously speculation. The Mossad, which already more than hinted that it's assisting the protesters. It didn't say how, but it basically would confirm that it was there with them. But none of this seems to be enough. So why do we think that it's on its last legs? Why do we think this regime can't survive another 2, 3 years, just as an example?
Generally speaking, regimes do not collapse because of airstrikes or because of military campaigns. Regimes fall because of two major reasons or the combinations between of them. The first one is a total defeat, like Japan and Germany in
Hmm.
World War II, where Japan and Germany were fully occupied, okay? And we saw a regime change. The other option is a regime that is toppled down by its own people or by any, I would say, elements inside the regime itself, okay,
Yeah.
that are wishing to replace the leader, to replace the current leadership, but they are coming from the institutions of the regime itself.
Right.
And the third way is a sort of a revolution, okay, a popular revolution. We saw it, for an example, in Russia in 1917, if you want. But we have some other examples as well.
Hmm.
The problem is that the situation in Iran with the current regime is that um, the people of Iran actually have no power to topple down this regime. As long as we have there the revolutionary guard that actually hold or have almost all the power and control the country. And the idea of controlling the country is a matter of survival for them. I mean, for
Yeah.
them, if they're losing control over the country, they will lose their life. I
Yes.
mean, zero-sum game.
Yes.
Uh, but if and you need, I would say, a very very strong and organized opposition with a leadership and with a leader. Um, I'm not sure that there is an Iranian opposition and an organized. I would say that there is a cohesion among the Iranian opposition because there are many, I would say, elements or many groups in Iran that are considered as opposition to the regime, but I'm not sure that they are well organized between of them, well coordinated between of them. There is no any leadership which is accepted by all of them. There is no any leadership that eventually organizes them to
Yeah.
operate. What we see is, or what we saw in the streets of the Iranian cities is spontaneous, demonstrations. Um, Not organized demonstrations, at least not organized in a way that can topple down the regime.
Yeah.
So the Iranian people or the Iranian opposition needs, I would say, three major things in order to succeed in toppling down the regime. First of all, they need an internal cohesion between the different components or elements of the opposition.
Hmm.
Secondly, they need a leadership and the leader, and they have to be well organized. And thirdly, they need outside support. And here the Americans come, okay? Here the
Right.
international community can help in this regard by making or by providing, I would say, two things that might help the opposition. First of all, um, military strikes against the centers of gravity of the regime in a way that will paralyze the regime and will prevent the regime from acting effectively against the demonstrators, against the people.
Hmm.
And the other thing is very heavy and substantial economic sanctions that will paralyze the entire country, the entire state. And here there should be a very, I would say, good cooperation and coordination between the opposition and the outside actors, the outside players, like it was in Venezuela, for example, at least according to the things
Right.
that we have read in the newspaper, the coordination between the American administration, the CIA, and internal domestic elements in the government, even of Venezuela. Okay, but of course, in Venezuela itself, in the institutions, in the intelligence, the military, I don't know. So we are not there yet. I'm not sure that there is ripeness for toppling down the regime, but I think that the ripeness is in a building process. Okay,
Right.
it's in being,
Right.
uh, and I believe that eventually it will occur. It might take months, it might take more than months, but at the end of the day, and I'm going back to the beginning of our conversation, the regime is very fragile, faces a very severe uncertainty. Um, I mean, I believe that the regime lost its people
Yep.
after all the atrocities that we have
Yep.
witnessed. I think that the
Hmm.
regime has lost the people, or at least most of its people. And I think that we have a very determined America, a very determined American president. I believe that at the end of the day, President Trump and America will act. Uh, I think that they build the option. I think that they are waiting to the right moment and to the right moment. And I believe that at the end of the day, it will come, and it will.
Okay.
And I think that we are going to face a very dramatic changes here in the region.
Very interesting. And do you think that there's any scenario that could create what they like to call an off-ramp? I mean, for example, if I put myself in the shoes of the Iranian regime, which is, of course, very hard to do for us, but why wouldn't they say to President Trump, "Let's strike a good nuclear deal. We'll stop all enrichment like you're demanding." This seems to be like it would be the time for them to float these dramatic diplomatic arrangements. No, even if they have no intention of carrying them out in the long term, but wouldn't they be interested in buying some time for themselves, or do you think that that's unrealistic?
But I think that at the end of the day, President Trump is a businessman, and he wants and he prefers the diplomatic path.
Hmm.
Now it will be only under his conditions, and the conditions are very tough, because now it's not only the nuclear issue.
Right,
Now it's the ballistic missiles as well, the idea of all the proxies, the idea of supporting terror organizations. And it is really hard to see how the current Iranian regime will be able to accept these conditions. And if this regime will accept these conditions, it will not be this regime. I
right,
mean, once he will accept these conditions, it will be such a big humiliation for this regime, and it
right,
will be an indication of a very deep and significant weakness of this regime that will cause further demonstrations and protests, and it will create changes that will occur by themselves,
right.
maybe without protests. Because if they will accept the conditions and the demands of President Trump, it means that we are talking about different Iran.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
This is not the Iran that we knew for the last 5 decades almost. But I don't think that we are there. I don't think that they will accept the conditions. I don't think that President Trump will give up on his conditions.
right.
Not not now after what happened in Iran and after the declarations that he has made.
Okay. And that, when you say that this would cause humiliation and destabilize the regime, it reminds, I think, us and then all the viewers that this regime still does have a base in Iran, even if it's the minority of the Iranians. And there are still millions of Iranians, even if they're in the minority, who support the regime, who are members of the Basij, who are affiliated with the IRGC. And I think it's important for all of us to remember that because even though we know and we believe that the majority of the Iranians would like nothing more than to get rid of this evil regime, there is still a hardcore a base, and I guess the regime has to take them into consideration as well when it makes its
We
decisions.
have to remember that when we are talking about Iran, we are talking about a nation of more than 19 million people, okay?
Right,
Now, when you have the Revolutionary Guard and you have all the state institutions and the military and the Basij and the intelligence and all the security apparatuses, and they have all of their relatives and all the people that they
right,
feed. So we are talking about several millions, but this is less than 5%, I would say, of the entire Iranian people. So I think that the vast majority of the Iranian people cannot stand anymore this regime and
right.
would like to change this regime.
Right. Let's make a dramatic jump from Tehran into Gaza City and the wider area of the Gaza Strip. We also here seem to be at a very decisive and important junction. President Trump and the Trump administration has unveiled a pretty complex structure. We've got a peace board, then there's an executive peace board, the board for Gaza, then there is the founding board, which is more symbolic, and then you've got the technocratic government, which is supposed to be staffed mainly with PA people. Very complex structure. Most people are struggling to get their heads around it. And on top of that, you've got the first ever Israeli in the context of this war, Israeli statement criticizing the Trump administration about allowing Turkey to become a member of the executive board for the Gaza Strip because this is supposed to have some practical value. Israel has vetoed the entry of any Turkish military personnel as part of the International Stabilization Force, which also, by the way, doesn't exist. But we saw some pushback, and then we saw some reports saying, well, this so-called confrontation was kind of theatrical, and every side knew what was coming. So at the end of the day, it seems like the diplomatic momentum that Trump is trying to build is more and more disengaging from the reality on the ground. Because when we look at reality on the ground, all we see is Hamas and IDF. There doesn't seem to be anybody else. So where is this all going, Kobi? Is this going to end in a military operation and all these grand, proclamations will be put in the shelf on a dusty shelf and maybe they'll come back after the operation? Or is Israel going to actually allow this far-fetched,
Let
initiative
me
to move
begin,
ahead?
with your permission, let me begin with a short comment
Sure.
regarding your opening sentence to this topic.
Yeah.
You talked about the big distance, okay, between Iran and Gaza. So maybe there is a distance from the geographic point of view, but there is no distance from the strategic point of view.
Right.
And the importance of ending the story of Iran because it will impact Gaza as well, and it will impact the West Bank, it will impact Lebanon and Syria and Iraq and Yemen and
Yeah.
the entire region. But mainly when we are talking about Gaza, we have to remember that Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, each organization in its way, both of them are Iranian proxies,
Right.
okay, in this way or another. And Iran continues feeding Hamas, and Iran continues supporting Hamas. And by the way, Iran does utmost efforts in order to strengthen the terror infrastructure of Hamas in the West Bank. And they
Sure.
are trying to destabilize Jordan Okay, and this is
Yep.
something that affects our eastern border, and this is something which that affects Judea and Samaria as well, the West Bank as well, and everything is related to everything. Okay, all the arenas are interrelated,
Yep.
and therefore, when we are talking about Gaza, it is very crucial and important to remember Iran as well. This was a
100%.
general comment. Now,
100%.
with regard to your question. Um, Look, I think that what we are witnessing now is eventually the manifestation of President Trump's ambition to run with his, I would say, vision, with his plan. Um to position himself as the ultimate peace maker. Okay, I don't want to talk about the Nobel Prize, okay, but I want to talk about the importance of this image in his eyes, um, not only because of personal reasons, but also because of strategic reasons, because um, we are concentrating in the Gaza Strip and all the structure of the 20 points plan that begins with the board of peace and ends with a technocrats government, and in between we have some other components that you have mentioned. But just yesterday we heard that President Trump actually thinks about something which is much bigger than Gaza when it comes to the board of peace.
Hmm.
President Trump, I would say it in a very direct manner, okay? President Trump, at least as far as I understand him, um, wants to see the board of peace as a replacement for the UN,
Right.
not less than that.
Right.
This is something that challenges eventually and actually the entire, I would say, international order. So the Gaza Strip, and this is something that takes me back to the first day of the war after the attack of October 7th, when I said that I believe that this is not only a regional war, but this is a global war, and I said even that this is the beginning of the Third World
Hmm.
War, less than
Yep.
that,
Hmm.
because of the presence of the superpowers here in the region, and due to the fact that the war between Israel and Hamas, Israel and Hezbollah, and the Iranian proxies, and later on with Iran, is eventually the ultimate clash of civilizations. If we go back to Huntington, okay, actually the clash between the barbarism, the radical, the violent, the most extreme Islam, and I would say the Judeo-Christian civilization or the free world, or you name it. This was a clash of civilizations, and it is, still is a clash of civilizations. And therefore we found Gaza in the streets of London and Manhattan and Berlin and even in Australia and New Zealand. Okay,
Yep.
and I think that in this regard, the idea of Trump plan, which is backed, by the way, by the Security Council of the UN with the Resolution 2803. This is this is only the beginning. This is something. This is a platform for President Trump for something that is much bigger than the Gaza Strip. First of all, it comes to the regional architecture that he wants to shape. And in his perception, the idea of expanding the Abraham Accords, or the idea of bringing new, I would say, partners or members or countries under the wings of these agreements, he doesn't think only about Saudi Arabia or Oman or even Syria. Okay, he thinks about Indonesia, about Pakistan. Okay,
Right.
actually, he wants to use the regional architecture by the leverage of the Abraham Accords, in order to create a sort of Pan-American, I would say, era or region that will establish and will make the American hegemony and the American
Right.
superiority something which is much more solid.
Entrench it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And therefore, I think that the Gaza Strip is only a sort of a platform for President Trump, and therefore he is very determined, and therefore he doesn't want to wait anymore. But in the very same time, I think that he understands that nothing will go further without disarming Hamas, without dismantling Hamas, and without demilitarizing the Gaza Strip. Because
Hmm.
without dismantling Hamas and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, there will be no ISF. No country will send its troops to fight Hamas. Okay, and the ISF is not going to disarm Hamas or to demilitarize the Gaza Strip. They will keep demilitarization of the Gaza Strip after it will be caused, okay, or it
Right.
will be achieved by the
Sure.
IDF.
Uh-huh.
But they will not do it by themselves. And therefore, there will be no ISF, there will be no reconstruction process. And he understands that as long as Hamas continues um, remaining as an effective sovereign power in the western part of the Gaza Strip, in this way or another, and they will remain, as long as they remain as an organized military entity, they will remain the effective sovereign of the Gaza Strip with the technocrats government, okay?
Of
Because
course.
they will dictate what actually this government will be able or will be allowed to do or not to do. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think that at the end of the day, he will reach to the conclusion that if he wants to succeed in realizing his own plan, then he has to push and to enable the IDF to accomplish the mission, which means to resume the military campaign against Hamas, to dismantle once and for all Hamas, and to demilitarize the Gaza Strip, and then to facilitate the required conditions for his plan, for the components of his plan, okay, to continue realizing the plan, and then to open the path to the restructuring of the entire architecture here in the Middle East, something that he will be able to leverage in order to increase the American influence even in other arenas. Okay, the Middle East, the broader Middle East, and in his eyes, in his perception, in his vision, he sees the new Middle East with a new Iran, with new Syria, with new Lebanon, that it will be without Hezbollah. He sees Syria and Lebanon as members of the Abraham Accords. He sees the Saudis as members. He sees the Pakistanians, the Indonesians as part of this new regional architecture. And by the way, when he thinks about regional architecture, he thinks about much beyond the region. He thinks about not only the Near East, which is the Middle East, but about the Far East as well. And this is something that takes him to where? To China.
Right.
Because once he will bring Pakistan and Indonesia, and who knows, maybe Malaysia even, to the Abrahamic Accord, to the Abraham Accord, then Indonesia and Malaysia and Pakistan are with America, not with China.
Right.
Okay? And this is something
Hmm.
that leverage the American position vis-a-vis the Chinese.
Right.
And the
So this is
Chinese are,
this is a linchpin for global sphere of influence,
of
right?
course,
Yeah.
of course, in this regard, he is a globalist. I mean, President Trump is a revisionist. I mean, at the end of the day, okay, at least in the jargon of international relations, what is the idea of revisionism? Is the idea of rejecting the existing order, okay? The idea of willing to change the existing order. And when you see yourself as a player, okay, as a state, as a very central pillar of the new order that you want to create. And this is exactly what President Trump tries to do. I mean, he is ready to give Russia and China to have some sort of hegemony in some parts of the globe, which are under, their very crucial interests. But at the end of the day, he wants to see America leading the world, leading the global economy, and he wants to see that many good allies or proxies, you name them, will be able to guard, to keep the American crucial interests all over the globe without American presence or with a very minimal American presence, be it in the Middle East or be it in the Far East or be it in Eurasia or in any other place, okay? I think that this is his vision at the end of the day, and therefore he is so determined with regard to Gaza.
I
And
see.
if we want to make another connection between Gaza and Iran. I'm thinking in the last 2, 3 days or so, when I'm asking myself how it comes that Prime Minister Netanyahu uh, accepted the idea of crossing so many red lines about the Gaza Strip. Okay,
Yeah.
how far he took himself from the
The goals of the war.
the ultimate victory or
Yes.
the um,
Or just the official war goals.
yes, of course. And the idea of not accepting the Turkish and the Qatarian presence or influence in the process as a whole. And I was thinking that there is something which is much bigger behind the scenes. I don't know, this is speculation, okay? I have no information about it. I think that at the end of the day, Prime Minister Netanyahu understood what I have tried to describe before about the importance that President Trump sees about about Gaza. And what is more crucial in the eyes of Prime Minister Netanyahu is Iran, because Iran is the head of the snake. And I
Hmm.
think that Prime Minister Netanyahu believes that once Iran will collapse, the Iranian regime will collapse, then it will collapse Hamas and Hezbollah. Okay, uh,
I
and he
see.
he said to himself, I will be willing to make some compromises with regard to Gaza in order to have President Trump on the same page with me with regard to Iran. President
Interesting.
Trump will back Israel and will be on the same page with Israel with regard to Iran and will do all the efforts in the highest possible manner of cooperation and coordination between both countries in order to topple down the regime, in order to collapse Iran, okay? And I will make some concessions in Gaza because anyway, at the end of the day, President Trump will come back to me and will ask me to do the job because nobody else will be able to do that.
Right. Right.
So I will have to fight my partners in the coalition. I will have some political problems. All my critics will be more critical, okay, and more cynical in this regard. But I'm looking on the big play, okay. This is my speculation. Maybe
Very
I'm wrong.
interesting. Fascinating.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that there is a sort of a deal here, a very, very big deal between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Gaza for Iran. And at the end of the day, Prime Minister Netanyahu believes that once Iran collapses, then Gaza collapse, Hamas and Hezbollah will collapse. Secondly, he believes that without the Americans, Israel will not be able, okay, to collapse the regime, and Israel will not have the international legitimacy to do that, or the capacity, or the price will be very, very high. And at the end of the day, he believes that all the plan, the magnificent plan of President Trump, will not succeed without toppling down Hamas, without disarming and dismantling Hamas, and nobody can do the job but the IDF and
Right.
President Trump will reach to the same conclusion. Okay, it will take 2 months, 3 months, but at the end of the day, it will reach, and then we won in both sides. Okay, we got Iran and we got Gaza in our way.
Right. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And Kobi, let me ask you one last question for this podcast episode. You mentioned Syria, the new Syria as being part of Trump's ambitions. But, we're aware that we have many questions about the new Syria. We're not so sure that it's going in this, rational, pragmatic, moderate, business-oriented direction when we see the Islamist militias, now where they're pushing out the Kurds. Do you think Syria and Turkey, which of course has its own plans for rebuilding its sphere of influence, do you think that they can actually integrate into this a vision of a new American-led world order, or are they going to just pretend to do that and build up, their abilities to create havoc in the future as the new Sunni bloc that could even fill a vacuum left behind by the collapsed Iranian Shiite axis?
I think that Syria is still an enigma. Mainly El Jolani himself, Ahmed al-Shara, the leader. And the problem that we have in Syria is, I would say, a problem in two or three levels. First of all, Syria itself, which is a very fragmented country, okay? Now we see the problems with the Kurds in the northeast part of Syria, but we know that we still have problems with the Druze in the south that Israel defend, by the way,
Yep.
because they are very close to our border. The Kurds that we have good relations with them, unfortunately, they are very far from here, and they have problems with the Alawites as well. It is, I would say that the words Syria and cohesion is a sort of very very substantial contradiction. Okay, um, so this is one problem. Syria is still very shaky and very fragmented, and there are many conflicts between the ethnic groups, and I still don't see how all of these ethnic groups come together to be a sort of, I would say, um, a cohesion society, or a very stable country and state. And we have to remember what are the origins of El Jolani and who are his soldiers.
Yep.
Okay, we see what is going there, and we still don't know all the details about all the clashes between his soldiers, the so-called Syrian military, and the Kurds. But we heard about atrocities that
Yep.
were held there, and we know about the atrocities in Jabal Druze in Sweden. Okay, these are the same
Sure.
soldiers. Who are
Yep.
these soldiers? These are not disciplined and trained soldiers. These are terrorists, jihadists, that most of them, by the way, their origins were in ISIS,
Yep.
okay, and then Jabhat al-Nusra, and then Hayat al-Sham, Al Qaeda. These are these are cousins. All of these organizations are cousins of first degree. It is not a disciplined military. It is not, people who are in favor of becoming good friends of the West. So this is one problem, or one level
Hmm.
problem. Syria itself, and the social fabric of Syria. The second problem is the presence of Turkey there.
Right.
And there is a competition between Turkey and the Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, okay, where the Saudis and the Emirates are on one side, the Turkeys on the other side. There is I would say, there is a sort of adversary and competition between the Saudis and the Emirates and the Turks. The Turks also, like the Iranians, they have hegemonic aspirations here in the region, and they see their presence in Syria as a leverage or as a platform or as a path, a gate, you name it, to a broader presence in the broader Middle East. This is, by the way, one of the reasons that they insist to be physically boots on the ground in the Gaza Strip, because they
Right.
know by being there in the Gaza Strip, not only in the executive committee of the Gaza Strip, okay, but to be there with boots on the ground, this is something that will open for them a path to a much deeper presence and involvement in the broader Middle East, and they will be able, by the way, one of the ways to reach hegemony and influence, or more hegemony and influence in the Middle East, is by pressuring Israel and by
Sure.
minimizing Israel capacities or capabilities of to maneuver or to influence here. And how they can pressure Israel? By their military presence in the north, Syria, military presence, boots on the ground in the Gaza Strip,
Yep.
and they are pressuring Israel from the north and from the south. So the Turkish presence in Syria is also a factor that should be taken into consideration.
Sure.
And the third thing is the idea of Israel and Syria and their capacity to reach to solid, I would say, reasonable understandings that will enable them to begin with a security agreement that will open the way for some other agreements, and later on, maybe Syria will be part of the Abraham Accords. But there is still a very long way to do. We have difficulties even with regard to security arrangements. I think that there are good talks between both sides. The Americans are in the picture as well, but
Hmm.
the Turks are interfering, the Russians are interfering. Both of them, the Russians and the Turks, do not want that Israel and Syria will become closer. Okay, they don't want the American influence in Syria. So there are many players, many agendas, and we mentioned before the Saudis, the Emirates, the Qatarians are there.
Yep.
And in each place that Qatar and Turkey, and mainly Qatar and Turkey together, are in, we have a problem when it comes
Right.
to Israel, okay, and to the Israeli interests, and I think that to the interest of the region as well. Um, so the situation is very complicated, very fragile, and I'm not sure that we are still in the beginning. Okay, we have to work hard in order to begin, and then to to facilitate the path and the conditions for further developments that will take us maybe closer to the joining of Syria to the Abraham Accords.
Mhm.
There is still a way to do.
Right. Fascinating stuff. Professor Kobi Michael, thank you so much for sharing these insights, which I have no doubt will be viewed with great interest by our viewers. And I look forward to hosting you on a future episode, hopefully not too long from now.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.